we're here for our next installment of the Enterprise Meetup under the Dynamics User Group and umbrella. We have some really exciting speakers here for you today. And we're going to kick it off with Madison, who's here from the Dynamics User Group. And she's going to walk us through a little bit of information about Dynamics, the organization itself. So let me move to the next slide.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Nancy. So my name is Madison Zulowitz. For those of you that were not here at the beginning when I introduced myself, I am the event coordinator here at Doug. So I work a lot with our local meetup groups as well as some of our regional events. So Doug is it's a free community for users, implementers, and resellers of Microsoft business applications. We mainly focus on Dynamics 365, GP, Power Platform community, and are really here to help educate people and to grow in their personal and professional careers. You can go to the next slide, Nancy. We'd like to keep it quick. So our roles of engagement, essentially, we just ask that these meetups are kept to be solely educational. So we ask that you don't do any sales pitches and that, again, everything stays solely educational. Everybody's here to learn and comes here to learn. And we love when people ask questions as well. I know the speakers really appreciate it at the end. Dynamics User Group has multiple different programs. So we have free online forums, webinars, conferences, meetups, a team up program, skill up, and we post lots of our online meetups like these on our YouTube account. So if you're ever looking to explore other speakers that have visited other local communities, it's definitely a good way to listen to lots of speakers. And if anybody has any more specific questions about any of our programs, feel free to message me or email me. Could go perfect. This needs to be a little bit updated, but we just had our Ohio and Texas regional Doug meetups, which are a little bit larger in scope than our regular local meetups. So they were about 150 to 200 registrants for each of these. Our next one is coming up in Southeast. So this will be in Tampa, Florida on October 29th, not September. We will be in Tampa, Florida. And then we are currently working on our Canadian regional meetup. Actually, we have lots of you on the call that are on that leaderboard. So we are working out a date. Hopefully it will be at the end of November or early December. So as soon as we have that date, we will be posting it to our local community.
And it's going to have an AI focus.
Yep.
So yeah, which is a bit of a theme in our meetup today. So it's very fitting.
Awesome. And we have our 2025 DynamicsCon in Chicago. So this will be from May 13th to the 16th, 2025. This is a multi-day educational event. We are going to have lots and lots of session speakers. Actually, session submissions for that are open now. And we actually, since the team and I, we just went to the venue in Chicago at the Hyatt Regency there, and it is beautiful. It's going to be a very big, awesome conference, the biggest one that we have had yet. So really looking forward to it and a great way to gain lots of education if you're interested.
How many people are you expecting, Madison?
Our goal is 4,000, which is
fabulous. That's great.
Yep. We have doubled in numbers every year. So hoping that we can hit that goal. And I will send your specific code in the chat once I'm done presenting as well. But we currently have a 50% off promo code going on until, I believe, the 30th. So if you are looking to go to DynamicsCon, I would definitely suggest signing up before September 30th, because this is the best discount that we will be giving. And I will send that in your chat. And I believe we're also doing a little prize for whichever user group uses the most promo codes. So that might be a nice dinner when we're in Chicago or something for your local group. I guess you guys are solely online, correct? So yes. Most likely something in Chicago.
We'll work hard on making sure that we get people to start using that code. It's in fact in the last slide of this presentation.
Awesome.
We have it there too.
Okay, perfect. And I'll send it in the chat as well. And then, like I said, session submissions are open now. And session submissions are also open for DynamicsCon virtual. This is on November 13th, and this is actually a old slide. Session submissions are closed, but voting is now open. So you can go on our website and vote for DynamicsCon virtual. It is a one-day event, multiple sessions throughout the day, and it's online and free. So great if you were looking to gain some education and networking.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Madison. So let's kick off our session today. I'll introduce myself, Nancy Calder. I'm the chair of this Enterprise Excellence Group. If you want to find out our objectives and mission, please join our Meetup site, our overall Meetup site, and see the types of things we're looking for. Organizations that have basically more than 100 users in their implementation or proposed implementation, and want to bring you topics that will help you create success in those implementations across Dynamics and across the Power Platform. So our agenda today is, as I said, we're going to have a little bit of an AI theme. We have Tony and Tom with us here today, and they're going to talk about personality assessments. And we chose this topic for this group, given that a real key to any implementation success. I'm a PMP, been around in implementing Dynamics for a very long time. A real key is the team coming together to actually, do that storming and then forming and making sure that you have a successful team. It's not that easy to do. So we'll have Tom and Tony talk a little bit about, I'll hand the screen over to them, and they're going to talk about personality assessments and how AI fits into that. And we're going to weave, so we have Vanda, who's also part of our organizing group here today, and she's going to talk a little bit about some of her experience with the project and ask some questions and have some discussion about what might have gone better when the project started. And then, there's lots of interest out there in other topics related to AI analytics, Fabric in particular. Will Hawkins is joining us, and he'll go on a little bit later to talk about the business case related to Microsoft Commission Forrester to actually do a total economic impact assessment. And he's going to join us a little bit later to talk about that. And then we'll do a little bit more networking, and we'll wrap up for the day. So thanks for being with us. I'm going to hand it over. Tony, I think you're taking over the screen share, if that's right.
Will.
Or is it Tom?
That'll be me.
Yeah, okay.
Tom's at a YMCA camp. We're just hoping for stable internet out of him.
Okay. We can see your screen. There we go. Perfect.
We can see a full screen.
Yep. Over to you.
All right. Okay. So thank you. I'll start off by saying we're all drowning in AI talk, and vendors either in this space or claiming to be in this space. We love AI, and we're already experiencing the game-changing aspects of it. I'm sure everyone on this call has been exposed to it, and that comment resonates. But this presentation takes a different look at AI and how we can leverage it alongside personality assessments to form the best possible team in your organization and to create awareness within your existing teams to know how to best optimize it. There we go. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm a virtual CIO and partner with vCIO Global. My previous career, I've had a couple long chapters. I started out as a developer for a food distribution company, food service in the Northeast. Spent 18 years there and created, developed, marketed, sold a product called Sales Pro. And it was meant for the independent food distribution companies to compete against the Cisco's and the US Foods companies that are out there. And I had quite a long stint with the Dynamics communities, DCI. Was on a series of boards and councils there, but I'm also on the advisory committee for this group, Dynamics User Group. And my last chapter was with a manufacturing company, global manufacturing company. I spent 11 years there heading up IT. Tom?
Thanks, Tony. So similar to Tony, I started out in the food business. We ended up with a line of frozen Mexican products. So ultimately sold that company, and I was looking for something to do. And a friend of mine tapped me and said, "Hey, there's this guy trying to find somebody that can sell software." Like, well, this was 98 and computers seemed like they were going to be a thing. So here I am, right? We got started with SPT originally, but then it was CRM and variety of flavor for the past 5 years, and really excited about the Dynamics User Group. We just think this community about the things, and we're always excited to help users get more out of their software investment.
Tom, I just add that the audio is a bit crackly there, so I don't know if there's anything you can do to adjust, but it was cutting out quite a lot.
Maybe kill video.
I'm going to try the best I can. I'm really sorry. So I'm in the middle of the woods. So I'll try.
With the bears. Okay, be careful.
Yeah. All right. So I wince a bit sometimes at this quote from Bill Gates, because we all as IT folks try to shake off the stereotypes that have persevered over time. But it's a fair statement, and one we should embrace with a little bit of levity. Because let's face it, today especially, every company is a technology company. I don't care if you're a tax accountant or make zip ties for Procter & Gamble. You take a look at every corner of your own organization, and you'll see real quick we all need to embrace technology to remain relevant and competitive. So for our agenda today, we're going to talk about why personalities matter, the impact of using these assessments, how AI will help supercharge team optimization, have a couple takeaways, and then we'll open up the floor for some Q&A. All right, so artificial intelligence and modern assessments have revolutionized team optimization with their ability to provide real-time insights into an individual's personality traits and team dynamics. And we're here to dive into that. With this information, you can optimize to work more effectively and efficiently, leading to better business outcomes. So where do you start? How do you begin this journey? Because that's what this is. It's a journey. It's not a box to check off, not in today's post-COVID business environment. So it starts with the gift of self-awareness. Often someone is self-aware, or I should say once someone is self-aware of their natural gifts, they can capitalize on their strengths and be aware of their weaknesses. A mistake that companies and individuals sometimes go down is focusing on improving their weaknesses versus putting all their energy into their strengths, knowing your sweet spot. You want to be self-aware of the weaknesses, and we'll talk about how the team helps close that gap. But again, you want to be self-aware. And then you have the gift of team awareness. This is where you start to have a multiplier effect and help to optimize. And again, we're going to dig into this a lot more here, because your potential will exponentially increase when you have team awareness. And a highly functional team covers each other's blind spots, because that's what you want to do. We all have 30% blind spots. And so how do you close those gaps and get the most out of it? And if so, as an example, if you're not a detail-oriented person, you want to make sure that you have that individual in your group. All right, so now the path to awareness. Now, Tom, if you want to talk a little bit about this.
Sure. Thanks, Tony. So, you know, we talk about a path, right? For any of our businesses, we're all on a journey, right? And we're working towards some business objectives. And when we look at vehicles that are available to us to help us better learn, better chart our path, then our odds of succeeding go better. And so when we begin to work with teams and we look at how do we help each other work together more effectively, and then how do we leverage? So many of us have had these technology or personality profiles in the past, right? But they're hot and heavy for a week, maybe a couple of months, and then they go in the drawer and nobody really can engage with them anymore, right? And so what we see with technology, and particularly with AI, is that if you can begin to bake these things into your systems, load that data, load those personality profiles in, then it's going to give you advantages. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the steps that we'll take along this path that can help you, and we'll make some suggestions around tools we like, but there's others. And so we're hoping we trigger some thoughts and we start some conversation here shortly. Tony?
All right, so let's talk about one of the most common personality assessments out there, and that's the 16 personalities. Widely used, it provides insights into an individual's personality type and how they interact with others. And by understanding their personality types, team members can be more effective in their communication and collaboration. It's not meant to put you in a box. It's just about your preferences. In the lower right, it's how we observe the world. It's how we think, feel, and make decisions. And then the 5 basic traits you see up in the upper right is what this assessment draws out. So this is the focus on you. Next, you have the working genius assessment. This one is really powerful and is a good complement to the 16 personalities. And what this does is it groups individuals into work types. So there's 3 groups of work types. And there's 6 subject areas off to the left. You have wonder, discernment, enablement, invention, galvanizing, and tenacity. There's a lot to digest on this slide. But to give you some examples, after the conclusion of this test, and it takes 10 minutes, you can't game it either. It's really quite brilliant. But so I'm a GI. That's my working genius. And the 3 groups are working genius. Those are your sweet spot areas out of the 6 groups. Then you have your working competency. These are areas that, yeah, you can do them, but you're subject to burnout. You have working frustrations. That's the last group. These are the things you want to avoid. It robs you of just joy and energy on the job. So my working geniuses are GI. And this is what then the description of them are above. See, I love to cheerlead. I like to rally people, inspire them to take action around ideas, projects, or tasks. But if you're asking me to take that to the finish line and have my pulse and all the details, I'm a failure. That's not where I want to live. I have no desire to learn how to live there. However, if a team member has a working genius in that T letter, that tenacity or enablement, I know that I'm going to get this project to the finish line because I'm surrounding myself with the right people. So that's the highlight reel of what this test gives you. It's all about how you work with others. And so just to give you further examples of teams when they lack something, for example, if you don't have a team with an I in the group, that's lack of innovation. Teams might struggle to generate new ideas, have creative solutions to problems, and it leads to stagnation. If you don't have someone who's a good discerner, a D, you might sit around the table and accomplish nothing. You're just going to sit there and talk, go around in circles, and you leave the room no better off than you were when you went in. So you can kind of understand the theme here and what's happening. And why we're focused on these assessments to start is because AI can be an accelerator the wrong way for team energy and team optimization. And we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So let's give some examples of personality assessments from the real world and how these teams have leveraged it. So Tom, I'll take the positive Best Buy example, and maybe you can talk about that potential negative with Southwest Airlines.
Sure.
But Best Buy implemented an employee engagement program that included personality assessments to better understand their employee strengths and motivations. This initiative led to a more engaged workforce, which in turn resulted in a 100,000 increase in annual sales per store. And it simply did just what we described. What's the motivator for this person? What are some gaps in the team that we need to fill? And it led to very positive results. Tom, Southwest Airlines?
Sure. Thanks, Tony. So, again, using the point that we were making earlier, these need to be, first, you have to be clear on where you're trying to go as a company. What are we trying to do? And then we use these personality profiles to better understand the team and help build a team around us. But what you can begin to find, and I think that anybody who's followed Southwest, so Southwest went from really kind of a poster child of companies that did some of these innovative things 20, 25 years ago, maybe, but more recently failed to adapt and keep current and invest in making sure that they're indoctrinated. And so when they ran into these issues through COVID and supply chain, some of their major well-publicized technology failures, because they were frankly in almost corporate panic mode, they forgot the importance of their frontline teams. They forgot how to communicate with their group. And so when everybody got under stress, well, these things started to surface, in impact customers. And so, you just because you're on top of it, we really believe that this is something that you want to stay on top of. You want to do it consistently, and you've got to remind yourself that, just because we were winning with this information at one point, we can lose our way and lose our team, as was really the case at Southwest.
All right, so impact of personality assessments on productivity and workplace satisfaction. These are pretty, I would say, no surprises here when you read this. Increased in productivity, lower turnover rates. I mean, let's face it, happy employees are more productive. In today's world of posting I am looking for employment on LinkedIn with a packed resume and well thought out profile, you start getting knocks at your door fairly quickly. And so if you don't have your finger on what motivates my employees and a focus on team optimization so that everybody's in their sweet spot, this can go south for you when there's a bad moment or a bad event with an employee. You want this person thinking, well, this company has my back, or I love what I do. I love the team that I'm a part of. You want them to think about remaining and not leaving on a dime, because the days of 40-year single career and I retire, that's a relic thought. unfortunately or fortunately, depending on where your head's at. But again, we want to make sure that we're doing our best to mitigate that. And at the end of the day, that impacts your business's bottom line, right? Happy cow produces the most milk. And think of your other phrases in that same vein. All right, so now let's talk about AI, because this is the accelerator. Because you can accelerate good or bad. Because let's face it, analogy that I like, and it resonates here on this topic. A plane leaving New York can just be just a degree off track, and they're heading for LA. Well, if they're just off a little bit, they can end up in the wrong state at the end of the line. So you want to make sure that we're all in our lanes. And so when AI is introduced to help provide us benefits and productivity, that we're accelerating good. Tom, anything to add on this?
Yeah, I think that, and we'll recommend a book at the end, but there was a really interesting book a year and a half ago, maybe, called The Alignment Problem, and it basically got to sort of in layman's terms, the core of how AI is functioned and how AI is trained. Right. And I think as IT folks or people that have been around IT, we roughly have the idea that you throw a massive amount of data at a computer and it somehow figures out how to answer things properly. But the fact is, there's been some really interesting research in how, frankly, my friends that are the developers in the group, what do we always say? The code doesn't lie, and the code always does what we told it to do. Right. It does exactly what we told it to do. But if we are somehow inadvertently, right, not nefariously, we asked it to do something, but it's flawed. And in the example that came out of the book that I found fascinating, so they're trying to help with, when do I admit? When a patient produces or presents with pneumonia-type symptoms, when does a doctor make the decision to admit? And so they were just testing the AI, but what they were noticing is it's like, hey, these asthmatics are showing up, and the AI is telling us don't admit. Like, what's going on here? And they start to dig into the source data, and the fact is, it was looking at recovery rates on pneumonia. And what had happened was, it didn't take AI to tell a doctor that when an asthmatic shows up with pneumonia, you should admit. Well, because they got admitted at a higher rate, they recovered at a higher rate. And so the AI was like, oh, the asthmatics, they're fine. They recovered just fine. And so it's those types of training models that we have to be really careful around as we begin to use AI, not only to help us better leverage our teams here, but in recommending or suggestions that it makes relative to other parts of our business.
Yeah, and it's not just what we're seeing with AI on the traditional assessments that we went through earlier, is that there's a social media aspect being linked into it. And I mean, it's out there in the public domain, your Facebook feeds, LinkedIn, pick your social media platform that you are participating in, and it's taking that information to form an opinion. Because one thing that AI gives for these larger organizations is scale. Candidate pools, they can be large. It can be overwhelming. And these assessments combined with AI can handle that mass without any issues. Now, I will say there's a bias warning you got to be aware of, because it's only as good as the data. So if there's bad data out there, it could be used in forming an opinion. But human assessors can be subjective and might interpret interpret responses differently. AI systems, on the other hand, apply the same criteria uniformly across all assessments, which can enhance the precision and consistency. But again, there's that asterisk of being mindful that it's still, if the data is wrong or skewed, that could manifest itself on the other side of that, right? But imagine this scenario. And as Microsoft, we know Microsoft is a major investor in this technology. I mean, billions, tens of billions. And imagine your personality profile and what motivates you, what your strengths are, your sweet spot is. It makes a determination based on your Active Directory profile that I'm a less is more guy. I don't want to drown in the details. And if you're going to send me an email that's 3 paragraphs long, I might get through 3 sentences before I'm bored. And it will tell you as you are responding or working in your team, it will suggest, hey, you know what? Tom is a less is more guy. He likes bullet points, not paragraphs. And it gives you the opportunity to adapt on the fly because and we've all been there, right? Just think of passing in the hall at work and you just say, hey, how's it going? And it's just meant for small talk. I'm going from point A to point B, and the person's like, oh, you wouldn't believe what happened to me yesterday. And this guy put his shopping cart right next to my car at Walmart, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. We've all been there and we know these people, and you roll your eye and you go, why did I say hello to Rob just now? I was just trying to be polite. That same type of thing is going to interweave, whether you realize it or not, into the systems and the solutions and the collaboration tools that we're going to be using. All right, so give you some real life examples of AI's role in our companies with the personality slant to it. Because not every one of these are perfectly tied there. But if I jump to the bottom first, you have Talkspace. It's an online therapy platform, and it uses AI to match clients with therapists based on their specific needs and preferences. And that, yes, involves assessments of the individual. It involves the social media crawl. Everything gets formed to try and best fit to the right therapist. And as you would expect, it improves the effectiveness of the therapy and enhancing user satisfaction. Stitch Fix, I'll jump up to the top. I kind of did this in reverse. It's an online personal styling service, and it uses AI and various machine learning algorithms to personalize clothing recommendations for its customers. And it will suggest and make suggestions of styles that the algorithm feels is a fit to that person's personality. You know, if you tend to be straight-laced, I'll say accounting type, apologize if that's a stereotype. You know, you're not going to get recommended goth dark clothing with, you know, exorbitant accessories, you know, just examples like that, right? And it knows that other folks with similar styles and personalities like this type of clothing, and it will recommend it. So you get the idea. All right, so synergy between AI and matching team strengths against AI. And there's a variety of tools out there. I don't know, Tom, if you want to take this one.
Sure. And, you know, we've touched about this along the way, but as we begin to think, and, you know, Tony's vision of the suggestion around how to write the email, right? Now, that's sort of our wishful thinking around what could you do if I could tie my personality assessment to my Active Directory profile, and then begin to look at Teams, Outlook, any of those collaboration tools that we're using, and having them tailor the experience and make suggestions based on the people that I'm trying to work with. So, you know, if I've organized a team, as an example, and we're going to work on a project, it, you know, might it suggest, as Tony mentioned, hey, you're missing a T in this group. And if you don't have some tenacity, you're going to come up with some great ideas and nobody's going to see them across the finish line, right? Just those, they're fairly simple, frankly, in their application, but we believe the impact can be really meaningful because nobody intends to build a bad project team or a bad task force, right? You're trying to put together the best and the brightest to get something done, but we all have blind spots. And so if we can use the AI and the rest of our communication and collaboration stack to help coach us to build better teams and interact with each other more effectively, then we think our odds of improved successful outcomes go way up.
Yeah, we want employee retention, not employees leaving. So this is not, I mean, this is a topic that all businesses really should take seriously. And there's, once you have that team formed, back to the basics, knowing the person, being self-aware, being team aware. Now you can plug in these technologies, AI fueled, of course, to help maximize that and feed off of those established strengths. I think of a tool called Lattice, and it's for team performance and analytics. It incorporates AI to analyze employee feedback and performance data within your Microsoft tenant. Not everything has to be a social media crawl. We're not promoting big brother technologies here, but how you've been communicating amongst your group internally, Lattice is aware of this, and it will offer insights to the managers to help call out user sentiment, to help call out potential conflict between colleagues. It just helps, again, focusing on the person, caring about your team. And it's about retention. And if you're happy, you know you're going to be, if you're happy at work, you're more productive, it increases the bottom line. But there's a broader impact too. Like a big thing at VCIO Global, we say we want to make the world a better place. That might sound cheesy, but I promise you it's not. Because if I'm happy at work and I'm optimized and I'm in my sweet spot, I go home happy. Well, that spreads out to my family. That spreads out to my community. It's just a blossoming effect. Other automation, to give you one more example, you think of UiPath, Blue Prism. These are tools that help reduce the mundane nature of certain tasks. You're training a robot to take care of this automated mundane aspects of your job. But again, these tools and these assessments help precision recommend the right tool for you. All right, so some key takeaways from this presentation. I mean, it's the importance of team optimization, the benefits of combining personality assessments and AI, and the tools and techniques to optimize team dynamics. And when you align teams with their priorities, projects, and company goals, and put people in their sweet spot, I promise you, teams will work more effectively and achieve better business outcomes. And again, all contributes to the bottom line. Tom, any closing thoughts?
No, but I think the next slide, we've got a few resources for you, and then there's links. So if in the notes, if you're interested in any of those case studies, there's links in the comments. We're happy to share those slides out.
Sure, and we'll come to Q&A. Here's just showing you the links. Once the deck is distributed, this will help take you to some additional resources. We talked about the assessments, Working Genius, 16 personalities. Those links are in the bottom right. And below there's a YouTube channel called CIO Lifeline, where you see Tom and I and our other partner and numerous guests. Rick McCutcheon was a most recent guest. He's also on this webinar. We just dive into IT thought leadership and have some fun along the way with it. So thank you again for your time. And if there's any Q&A, or we can jump to that next. So Vanda, Nancy?
Great. Yep, we'll open it up. Anybody on the call have questions, or should we jump to Vanda? You were going to talk a little bit about a project scenario.
I was, but I don't know if Will wants to dive in.
Sure. Let Will go first if you want.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks, Tony and Tom. That was a really, really awesome presentation. I was just curious if this has been something you guys have explored with M365 Copilot or any of the Copilot stack. Like, have you tried to involve that in the existing Copilot technologies, or is it mainly being done with other tools?
Isn't that funny, Will? You'll notice in a LinkedIn message that I just asked if you're interested in custom Copilot development. So we're really excited about that topic. And yeah, we're early on, but we don't have anybody that's launched their bot internally yet, but we think that's where it's headed.
Nice. Okay, cool. Yeah, looking forward to chatting about it.
Sure. And then Vanda, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, that's kind of a nice segue, actually. I'm sort of standing here or sitting here, listening. I'm thinking, wow, your presentation, which was fabulous, really is at the start of project team arrangements, isn't it? And I come from a background. I've been working in project delivery for a while. I worked for a large global tech consulting, and so I've come up against some conflict in a recent project that was, really threw me. Actually, it's not been the experience I've had throughout the company on other projects, I must say, and my mind's rattling away, wondering, once you're inside the project, if AI can do anything to help as and when conflict does come up. Just very briefly, my situation was I was matched based on my hard skills for a project that was a mismatch in the end. And I was full of self-awareness. To sort of go back to your assessments, I was very clear with the person that interviewed me that I could demonstrate and help with X, Y, Z on the project. But if they were looking for ABC, I'm still working towards that. I'm not quite there yet. I'm on a path, but I'm not as seasoned as perhaps you're looking for. So there was sort of not self-deprecation, but there was honesty and self-awareness on my part on what I felt I could contribute. And so I joined the team, and although there are people with a real growth mindset on the team, which is something we really foster throughout the organization, who knew that I was coming in perhaps more with a junior hard skill set, but they could see the potential and that I could actually ramp up and accelerate and improve as we're all supposed to on the project. I should probably just back up and say that we're global employees, so that means we could be assigned to any project for any client really at any time or any region. So the chances of us having worked together before actually isn't that probable. You come in on these client delivery projects, and you're probably lucky to meet one or two people that you've worked with before, but generally speaking, and that's why I'm finding this really fascinating, you are starting with a new bunch of people, so the client is new to you, and also the actual team that you're working within very often is new to you. So if I just continue with the story, so I came in with X set of skills, and I was looking for camaraderie, if you like, from within my immediate team, and there was resistance within my team. They felt they'd been shortchanged with someone that wasn't as seasoned as they wanted, who could jump 3 or 4 sprints ahead and fill the backlog in DevOps and all the rest of it. And it was actually really difficult because there were people in the team who could see the potential, and they looked at other things, whilst maybe the hard skill set, as it were, I needed to do improve in certain areas, which just comes with time and experience and confidence, of course, running client workshops and similar. But what I kind of no one expected, and I surprised myself, was one of the reasons I was certainly retained on the project was that I was the one that came in and I achieved what others in 4 months hadn't achieved, and I achieved the strongest client relationship in the whole team. And it was at a point where we were really building up, sort of getting to know the client. It's going to be a long 1-year project. And so I invested my time in something that I knew I could do well from the get-go. And the feedback I had from the client and actually half the team on the project was that I had come in and I had achieved what people who've been on the projects for 4 months already hadn't. And
So
that
Vanda, was there one person, or Tony, do you have any sort of perspective
Well,
on how
I mean,
situation might have? Yeah.
No, thank you for sharing that. And we see it all the time. It's why before we engage, and it doesn't matter if it's a CRM implementation or an ERP implementation or just general IT leadership within an organization, it always starts with personality assessments. So we practice what we preach. The very 2 that you heard about today, we do that because let's face it, especially today, it's the lean mentality of businesses do more with less. To be in an organization where you have a dedicated project team that doesn't have a full-time job as well is increasingly rare. Mm-hmm. And so you want to make sure that you have the right group. Everybody's in their sweet spot because you're asking them to put in extra time and the extra stress that comes with it. And what I heard you say, Vanda, was, it's a collection of folks that don't know each other most often. And so when you do these assessments and you share the results together as a group and you're self-aware, and look, guys, if you're looking at me to make a decision, wrong guy. I'll give you all the ideas you want, and so you kind of have that raw, open discussion, and it's just a great icebreaker. But the benefit is, that you're covering blind spots before you really dig into that project.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and depending on the length of the project, we're also big fans. I'm sure we've all heard the little phrase, right? But forming, storming, and norming, right? So the better we can systematize and condense that process, as Tony, we always joke. I'm like, if I could get a good fight going in the first 30 minutes, this is going to save us a lot of time, right? But the idea is you can't shortcut the human relationship development piece. And so we need to have some mechanisms, particularly among remote teams.
Yeah.
Like maybe we got to have a trivia night. Right? Yeah. Maybe we got to do because open communication, the only way I know that you were talking about, right? Maybe a little bit of a personality difference with some of your peers. People aren't maybe conducting themselves. They think they're doing the right thing, right? But, working ahead is not always the right thing.
Yeah.
And so, it's all those little tools that we need to bring together to make the process work better. Because the worst part about all of this is we're dealing with human beings.
Exactly. So you can't account for taste. You can't account for all the personalities. But these personality tests, I'm standing here thinking, wow, a lot of this could have really helped before I joined the project, or expectations at least could have been set a lot more differently. Yes. I'm pleased to say it's a one-off. It's not my experience within the organisation, but it's just interesting. And then the difficulty is, what to do if you've got somebody on the team and it's not an ideal match. Do you proceed with that person and retain them on the team? Do they need to come out of the team and somebody else be brought in? So a lot of that could be saved, that kind of discussion, couldn't it? And
as assessments up front, right? Like it would
exactly
make sense.
Yes.
With my global team, we've done personality assessments twice, so that we know in different types of assessments, because we all work remotely. It's the same thing. I mean, there's one individual, he doesn't say a lot, and he was quite introverted, so we have to invite him in to the discussion all the time, because he's got brilliant things to say, but you got to invite him in. And I want to thank you all for the presentation and the topic. Up next, we have Will Hawkins presenting the total economic impact report, his point of view on it from Forrester. So yeah, over to you there, Will.
Awesome. Thank you, Nancy. Thanks, Tony and Tom. That's a kind of a hard presentation to follow, given we're jumping into more business talky data, lovely stuff like that. But, you know, obviously with any AI model, with any co-pilot, with any, you know, aspect of technology, just naturally there's data, right? And to be able to make effective decisions with any of that kind of stuff, you need the right data in the right place at the right time, right? You know, the adage of garbage in, garbage out becomes more and more prevalent as we see AI models that take on larger responsibilities, like being able to conduct a personality assessment. So you need to have those tools in place to make that happen, which is what we're going to be talking about when it comes to Microsoft Fabric. Hopefully you guys can see my screen. Let me know if not. But the key thing that I wanted to highlight, because you know I've been working with Microsoft Fabric practically since it came out in early of 2023, and you know you go to the build conferences, you go to Ignite, you go to all the Microsoft conferences, and they'll all tell you, you know, this is what it does, this is all the cool toys in it, these are all the really interesting features and technologies that live within the Microsoft Fabric stack, and that's really awesome. But that's a very difficult thing to justify to leadership and executives and senior management when they're looking at the price tags of, you know, why am I buying a system that can cost me upwards of, you know, tens of thousands of dollars, right? And so that's basically what Microsoft had Forrester work on, was they commissioned a report to go through exactly what the business case of Microsoft Fabric is at a fundamental level. And so that's what I'm going to spend the next hopefully 15 to 20 minutes talking with you guys about. So I'm going to just kind of introduce myself, go through, you know, some context around the TEI report, you know, what's relevant for the discussion that we're going to have in terms of the key financial and non-financial benefits, the costs and considerations, and hopefully we'll have some time here at the end to just kind of discuss and answer any questions. So before we jump into that, like I said, my name is Will Hawkins. I'm the lead AI engineer and founder of Rightway AI, which is a people-centered AI company. So we basically just specialize in the Microsoft AI stack, doing consulting and implementation of any kind across Microsoft Fabric, Azure, and Power Platform. Not really, you know, something to dive into deeply, but the reason that I wanted to bring that up is because we spent, like I said, a lot of time with Microsoft Fabric. And if that's something that you're not overly familiar with, these are kind of the need to knows that I've boiled down for you over, you know, the last 16 months, because, you know, Microsoft Fabric might be something that most people have come across, but maybe have not spent time in. And I know it's a fairly newer technology. So that's kind of why I wanted to illustrate these points. So you can kind of think of it as a one-stop shop for all your data management, all your analytics, all your business intelligence solutions. You know, it's basically putting Power BI, Azure Synapse, Dataverse, you know, any data and analytics technology that you can think of can live under this SaaSified platform of Microsoft Fabric. And as a data scientist, I know from personal experience, although I train models, about 90% of my job is making the data so that I can train the model on the data. So having that ability to ingest and process and warehouse and cold storage, report, do all the AI modeling under one roof is a really important thing for anybody that works with big data. And the really key value proposition that I would say for Microsoft Fabric is it's basically SaaSifying big data cloud analytics, right? Before Microsoft Fabric, you needed to have 7 different Azure services. They all needed to talk to each other. You need to have APIs set up for, you know, a bunch of different softwares to make sure all that data can live in one environment. And that's what Microsoft Fabric aims to mitigate, is basically being able to do all of that from one screen, from one lakehouse, and one open data format. If there's any Power BI folks watching this, you can kind of just look at it as Power BI Online version 2, because now you have Power BI, but you have all of these other beautiful capabilities that you see down here that allow you to do the ingestion, the mining, the engineering, the warehousing, and all the wonderful stuff outside of reporting that is just as important. So like I mentioned, some context. What is a total economic report? So if you've never heard of Forrester, they are a world-renowned industry research consultancy. Microsoft commissioned them to do an independent study of Microsoft Fabric. So companies like Forrester, Gartner, Verdantix, they all do an objective research-based kind of business towards developing an understanding of technology for senior management and stakeholders, so you can understand the justification, how to actually realize value from these IT initiatives like Microsoft Fabric. So the total economic report, this is essentially Forrester's take on being able to explain and simulate the return on investment over a three-year time horizon for a composite company. And when they say a composite company, essentially what they did is they took the interviewee's experience from 4 different firms that were actively using and deploying Microsoft Fabric across their business, and amalgamated those results into a fictitious company of 10,000 employees and $5 billion in annual revenue. So the report aims to do an analysis of that composite organization. So basically aggregating all of the data, but then doing an analysis through that aggregation lens to try and illustrate the kind of benefits that these companies are getting from Microsoft Fabric. And so what are those benefits? Like I mentioned off the top, there's the key financial ones, and then there's non-financial. And the financial ones are a little interesting because, as you can see right here, and if you look up the report on your own time, the big statement is the return on investment over 3 years is 379%. That's a really big number. And what does that mean, in a practical sense? When they're talking about this return on investment, it can be broken down mainly into different financial and non-financial categories. So the first one is improved business analyst productivity. So the composite organization found about a 20% productivity boost from using Microsoft Fabric, which saved the composite company about $4.8 million. So if you scale that down, you can think of it like it could translate to $12,000 saved per business analyst, because the composite organization saved $4.8 million and they had 400 business analysts in the composite organization. So to just kind of scale it for any size of enterprise, since I know this is an enterprise group, but just for any kind of company that's trying to do it small, medium, or large, you can kind of think of it like, this is what I'm getting as a cost savings from my own perspective. And then of course, the composite company saw a 5% revenue increase from better insights. I think, oh, sorry, go ahead, Tony.
So just a question, you kind of answered it here, but for cloud skeptics and cost skeptics, do you feel that there is a kind of, I'll say, minimum sized organization before they consider being all in with Fabric, or do you feel it scales appropriately for small, medium, and so on?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I'll answer with a story, because one of my clients is a very small ISV, less than 30 people, and they have a customer that wanted to try out Microsoft Fabric, and they wanted to do it in an economical way. And when you go into Microsoft Fabric and you spin up a free trial, it sets you up with what's called an F64 license, which is the equivalent of a Power BI P1 license. That's about $5,000. Most companies that are, not really into big data cannot just afford that out of the hop. So what Microsoft Fabric has done that allows it to be more affordable for smaller and medium-sized organizations is that they've set up SKUs that give you lower compute power, but also allow you to, use Microsoft Fabric from a cost-effective standpoint. So what we did is we used what's called the F2 SKU, which is the smallest SKU. It's probably about $300 to $350 Canadian a month. And we were able to pull 3 different data sets from 3 different sources, one of them being Dataverse, and create a self-sustaining BI model that you could do cross-reporting on. And basically the cost for the month was just the Azure compute of running that system and the report, and then the data storage. And the data storage was peanuts, because as I'll talk about with OneLake, that obviously saves you a lot of money on the data storage. So to answer your question, it does fit for any size of business. You can scale up or down depending on what you need it for. You can also turn it on and off depending on whether you're using it or not. Like if you use an F2 or an F4 for a month, and then you're like, yeah, this isn't really for me, you can just pause it, turn it off, and that pauses your Azure subscription, so you don't have to incur charges to continuously use it. So hopefully that answers the question.
That was a great example and answer. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. If there's anything else, just let me know. Otherwise, I'll continue on, because I think as as a data engineer and data scientist, one of the big benefits that I loved about using Microsoft Fabric is the fact that you are taking everything into one house. And so that's what the TEI report found, was there was a 90% reduction in the time spent on searching, integrating, and debugging for the data engineers. And what that kind of translates to is a 90% reduction in the total cost of ownership, right? As a data person, rather than going and talking to this software and this software and this software, and then figuring out how all of their protocols work, figuring out their formats, and trying to figure out how I mix and match that into one data set in one place that I can do stuff with, that takes a lot of time. And so being able to basically ingest whatever data set into what's called the lakehouse format, and have them all sit in the same format, essentially in the same place, you're saving 90% of your time in being able to do that. And so that translates to about a 25% productivity increase for the data engineers of the composite company. So that saved them about 1.8 million. And so again, you can kind of scale that down to you're saving about $45,000 per engineer, because the composite company saved about 1.8 million and they had 40 data engineers. So to kind of give perspective on what that means per head, that's another way that you can look at it. And then the last point that you see up here in the top right is the payback. So what they found with the composite organization is they were able to break even on the investment that they made with Microsoft Fabric within 6 months. And I would say from doing it with other clients, obviously the time frame can vary depending on how much of your business data you want to put into Microsoft Fabric. But even if you spin up a free trial and you put 3 data sets in and build a report, it's probably only going to take you 2 weeks. Like it's definitely a much faster time to value, because you're getting all that time back from not having to orchestrate and pull data from a bunch of different places and put them all in the same place. So that's why companies are seeing a faster payback on Microsoft Fabric, because there's not as much time spent on coagulating or wrangling up all of the data. And of course, not everything's about the numbers and zeros, I should say. There's a lot of benefits to Microsoft Fabric that come, from the qualitative lens, and I want to focus particularly on the second one first, because I think this is really what Fabric is designed for, is being able to take your business teams and your technical teams and make them work in the same sandbox. And so one of the senior advisors that was interviewed said, Fabric empowers a wider range of people to start working with data, enabling collaboration, contribution, and learning across all teams. That's really key, because Microsoft Fabric is allowing business analysts who maybe don't have the IT background to have access and do more with data, right? Of course, you have your security and your governance frameworks to make sure people aren't playing with sensitive data that they shouldn't be. But those business analysts are able to use data more effectively because they have an access level that matches their ability to work with that data. And because they're in the same sandbox as IT can go ahead and provision all of the stuff that's really nice and clean cut for business analysts to use. So they're getting access to higher quality data, better data. Their interpretation of that is producing higher quality insights, right? Like you're seeing up here with the time to market improvement. One of the vice presidents said that they achieved a 6 times faster development cycle of analytics sets because they're able to do all of this in the same place, and IT and business are talking through the same lens. And then, of course, one thing that these companies found is when they deployed Microsoft Fabric, it exposed all the weaknesses in their data governance architecture and model, right? Because you think about prior to being able to put everything in the same place, you'd have a data governance framework for software A and a governance framework for software B and C. But when you're doing all those in the same place with one lake, you got one security model, you got one data governance model, and Microsoft Fabric is also designed for that level of administration. You can kind of promote data sets, you can set up workspaces for specific kind of job domains, and that's really allowing companies to have that stronger data governance. Of course, this comes with costs, and I know we're getting close to time, so I want to be mindful of that. So the key costs really come down to Microsoft-related fees, because it's obviously a Microsoft product, then the actual cost of implementing it, and then ongoing maintenance costs over the long term. So the Microsoft-related fees, you can kind of break it down as a per terabyte cost. You can see here with the screenshot that I've set up here, basically what you're paying for is storage capacity and then the compute engine, which is called Spark. And so what they did with this analysis was they said, okay, for each terabyte of data, you're adding a more to the cost, right? So if you take 34,566 and you divide it by 5 terabytes, that's where you're going to get that 7,000, right? So basically the per terabyte cost is the fees paid to Microsoft risk adjusted divided by the number of terabytes in a given year. So you can roughly look at a per terabyte cost of about 7,000 all in for your storage, your compute, and your Spark engine. And so for an organization with 10 terabytes, that looks like $70,000 in Microsoft related fees. And then the implementation costs for the composite organization were 1.1 million. And so dividing that by the 40 data engineers in the composite organization, it's about a cost of 27,500 per data engineer and 2,750 per business analyst. And then the interesting one is the ongoing maintenance costs, right? You see that big number, 352,000 over 3 years. What does that mean? Like, is it just a really expensive platform to maintain? Really, the cost that the ongoing maintenance cost that they found was hiring somebody to manage the system, right? If you bring on a fully burdened annual salary of a system admin, you're looking at about 94,500 to just kind of oversee everything in Microsoft Fabric and provision all the right resources. So they found that the ongoing maintenance fee, risk adjusted by 15% for having just that one full-time employee, was about 108,675. So you can basically look at it as like for every full-time person or part-time person that you have to add on to your team to work on Microsoft Fabric, the ongoing maintenance cost is going to be what you pay them to do that, right? So that's kind of how they've set up this ongoing maintenance cost structure. So if any of that doesn't make sense, I'm happy to talk about it more after. But I did want to jump into some of the notable gaps in the report because I think it's important for this group and just overall decision makers. So the first thing is they kind of go off the assumption that you already have existing Microsoft technologies like Synapse, SQL, and Power BI. So that's why it kind of looks like Power BI version 2, because you're really just kind of amalgamating Synapse, SQL, and Power BI into one interface. So if you don't have those technologies already, it may be something that impacts the cost and the time of actually implementing the technology. There's really a lack of industry-specific analysis. You can see in their interviews, 2 out of the 4 were manufacturing, 1 was technology, and 1 was energy. So they didn't look at anybody in healthcare or finance or any industry that could be highly regulated. So that's another consideration for the overall cost and implementation is how does the regulatory impacts play into it. They obviously are building this composite organization off of a good data architecture. So for organizations that don't have a super straightforward one and may have a lot of legacy systems and stuff like that, you could incur extra costs that way. And then there's limited information on long-term maintenance costs, right? They did a simulation of 3 years, but Microsoft Fabric's only been around for 18 months. So there's no evidence really at this point of what it looks like 10 years down the line. The important thing to note on that though is that they are adding new features really regularly. Like honestly, I think they had stuff that just came out at the end of this month. So there's always new stuff being added, and that obviously goes into the overall fees. And then, like I said, because it's a composite organization of 10,000 employees with $5 billion in revenue, those financial metrics are based on a very large scale. So replicating those same results with small or medium-sized or even small enterprises, you may not get the exact results the same way, but just keeping that in mind based off of their analysis. And a couple of other things to note. And kind of off of Tony's point, right? They simulated the rolling out of the proof of concept over the first 6 months. And then in year 1, they rolled it out to 50% of the business, 85% in year 2, and 100% in year 3. So you don't have to do this all right now. It's not, Copilots are a bit different, but Copilot's more designed to be turnkey, right? You turn it on and then you go and do your thing with it. Whereas Fabric is more of, bite off what you can chew. Try out the free trial, which lasts 60 days. Like I said earlier, Fabric can be turned on and off with PayGo, so you can pause your capacity anytime if you don't want to use it anymore. You can scale up or down if you have a big data load that you have to do. So there's not really a rush to get into it. It's more just, if you take a little bit of a time, how does that work for your business? And then, basically just key takeaways. The report's a good example of Microsoft putting money where their mouth is because they commissioned this report to say, like, look, this is the actual financial and monetary value that organizations are getting from Microsoft Fabric. So maybe if you're not as much on the product side and really interested in all the data and analytics stuff that you can do in there, you at least get an understanding of, okay, what is this actually doing for my overall organization? There's clear business benefits, right? You're saving money per head. You're saving money on the total cost of ownership. You're streamlining the time it takes to develop analytics, which is really crucial, especially in a data-driven world today. 6-month payback, right? You're breaking even after 6 months. No hidden fees, right? The costs are broken down in the report through a proper analysis. And more importantly, with Microsoft Fabric, you're really paying for the storage, the compute, all in one. And yes, there's a few things outside of that, but those are more for extraordinary circumstances. And then Fabric functions like Power BI version 2. So like I said earlier, if you don't have the data infrastructure to work with Power BI, you may find it challenging to onboard right away. And then, yeah, you could take your time. There's not really an immediate rush to put all of your data into this one place. So if you kind of roll it out slowly, like they did over 3 years, this could definitely be something that helps you over the long term. So that's it. Thank you guys for listening. Really appreciate, the Enterprise Doug team for giving me the chance to talk about this stuff and present. I don't know if it was mentioned at all, but I did write a LinkedIn article on this subject. So if you're just looking for a readout, that's on my LinkedIn thing. And then the full TI report is also available here. So I can send that link if you need. But yeah, that's it for me. Thank you guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Will. Any questions from the group? Okay, and you're done your slides, so I can take over the screen.
Yeah, go ahead.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. That's insightful. Sometimes going through those reports is a chore. So seeing a short form Cole's Notes, Reader's Digest version is certainly very helpful. So I'm just trying to get back to my my slide here to wrap up. Let me know when you can see my screen. Can you see the wrap up slide?
We're good.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So, we really appreciate you being here today or watching online. Please spread the word. We think we're going to bring really good content to, the likes of this audience. We'd like to see more people here live with us so that we can get more interaction and, feedback from a group. So I wanted to share with you our next meetings. In October, we have a program planning and estimation topic that we're going to discuss, and we're going to bring Seer 365, who's a partner in the channel that has a tool that they have called Guide 365 that's in use by many Dynamics partners at the moment for this very topic of planning, estimating, and ultimately it goes into DevOps and helps you execute. So that's we're going to have a speaker there. And then November 14th, we're going to talk about, the overall execution. How do I actually manage and track my program and ensure that I'm, on my way to success? We have, a guest speaker lined up for that. Sorry, it's escaping me which company they're from, but that's going to be the main topic. And then, we're always looking for, what do you want to hear about next? Like, should we talk about automated testing next? What are the other things that are of interest to the group here that is trying to make sure they have success implementing and ongoing success with keeping the solution evolving with all the new releases that are coming out. So thank you to all the speakers today. Hopefully we'll see you at DynamicsCon Live in May. We have the promo code here, and looks like Madison, you wanted to jump in.
Sorry, I meant to hit the clapping sign and not raise.
Okay. So
Just to add,
thank you all.
Sorry, I was just going to add, Nancy, I think for October, we're also going to touch on Wave 2 release.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we're going to have that as the recurring theme. We're going to talk about Wave 2. One of our colleagues that helps us is from Fast Track. So he's got some information as well from Success by Design and how do we fit Success by Design. He's done a preliminary. So if you missed it, he did do a preliminary one back a couple of months ago, probably before we took the break for the summer, where he introduced Success by Design, which is the Microsoft methodology for Dynamics. So I'm happy to get that sent out to you as well. So that's it for us today. We can wrap up unless there's any other questions. No, look for this. Oh, let's see a few people coming off mute.
I was just going to say thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say thank you to the speakers and the leaders.
Yeah, thank you guys for running this. It was awesome.
Perfect.
We'll get the materials out. So Madison, it's a bit late for me now, but tomorrow when I come in, I'll make sure we get the video saved and shared with you to post on YouTube. And I don't know, given that it's just a speakers left now, perhaps a PDF version or one that I could add and circulate to people that attended today of your respective presentations. That would be helpful.